I stumbled upon 50 terrifying cryptid tales that whisper from the dark woods in the rain. I never should have opened that door. It creaked like it was warning me. Outside, shadows danced against the dark, twisted trees. The air was heavy with dampness and something else, a chill that crawled up my spine. My day had started so normally. I was sipping coffee, scrolling through the usual feed when I saw it. A link to Cryptid Tales. Curiosity gripped me. I had heard of Bigfoots and Mothmen, but these stories were different. They were whispers. Whispers that promised terror from deep, dark woods. The more I read, the more I felt a strange tension. There was mention of a creature so large, it shook the ground with its steps. And then there was the Flatwoods monster, with its glowing eyes and terrifying presence. I could almost hear the low growl echoing through the trees, chilling me to the bone. The descriptions danced vividly in my mind. I could smell the earth wet from the rain. The whispers got louder. Were they saying my name? Suddenly a noise snapped me back. A thump from the shadows outside. My heart raced. It wasn't just the wind. It was a deliberate sound. I pressed my forehead against the window, daring to peek into the murky darkness. I could see nothing, just a heavy curtain of shadows hanging thick in the air. I shook my head, trying to dispel the growing dread. I turned back to my phone, but the tales wouldn't let go. Stories of creatures with teeth that could rip flesh, glowing in the moonlight, lingered in my thoughts. It all felt strangely personal. The room seemed to grow colder, as if the darkness held its breath, waiting for something. Another thud echoed. This time I felt it in my chest. The vibrations were alive. I grabbed the edge of the table, nails digging into the wood. My mind raced. Should I go out? What would I find? I had to know. I reached for the door handle, feeling the cold metal bite into my skin. Just as I touched it, a figure emerged from the shadows outside. A tall silhouette, blurred and monstrous, shifting and twisting like a shadow of a nightmare. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, panic flooding my veins. What was it? My heart thundered louder than the drumming rain. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't look away. The figure moved closer, and I felt a scream clawing at my throat, desperate to escape. And then the door slammed shut behind me, cutting off all escape. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air thickened around me, a suffocating shroud woven from shadows and my own rising terror. Heart pounding, I turned to face the door that had betrayed me. Now a solid barrier between my feeble grasp on reality and the horrors lurking just on the other side. The figure remained. I could feel it, pressing against the cold wood, a palpable weight that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. From behind the door, a whisper sliced through the relentless rain. It was soft yet coarse, weaving in and out of syllables like a child's crumbling attempt to recount a nightmare. They can hear you, it rasped. A voice that felt both close and impossibly distant. You shouldn't have opened the door. My breath hitched as dread pierced through me. I clutched my phone, the bright screen illuminating my palms, revealing flecks of dirt that didn't belong. I barely registered when the beastly form outside shifted, no longer just a silhouette but now a mass impression of something unholy, an embodiment of shadows where no light could reach. I dared another glance through the window, heart pounding as my fingers trembled against the cool glass. Lightning illuminated a face I could scarcely comprehend, twisted features, eyes that glowed like two dying embers, and a mouth stretched wide into a grotesque grin, revealing a set of teeth that seemed far too long, too sharp. With a sudden gust, the window rattled in its frame, sending my pulse racing as I pulled myself away. Trapped. I was utterly, irrevocably trapped. Was it my imagination, or was the whispering growing louder? It filled the space around me, prickling the back of my skull with that overwhelming sensation of being watched. My mind was a tempest of thoughts. I could hear the tales I had read playing like a warped record, each horrific description rendering itself real within the confines of this cursed night. I threw myself against the door, pressing my ear against the cold wood, straining to hear over the torrential downpour. Every raindrop seemed like a footstep, each patter amplifying the dread clenching my stomach. "What do you want?" I yelled, voice cracking, half challenge, half plead. A chilling silence blanketed the space, the rain abruptly halting as if it too held its breath. Then, as if responding, an echoing laughter broke through, layered with a soft hiss that sent shivers spiraling down my spine. It spoke my name, not in the casual address of familiarity, but as an invocation. Again, lightning flashed, momentarily banishing the darkness and revealing a figure darting behind a tree, its shape morphing like a wisp of smoke, gesturing toward me with elongated fingers. The moment was fleeting, and as the dark returned, I was left with the sensation of claws scraping against the earth and the undeniable urge to flee. Battling the urge to look again, I fought to gather my wits. That was it. I couldn't stay here, surrounded by the shadows that conspired against my sanity. I needed to break free to find sanctuary in the light, but first I had to disarm the door. Wrenching it open might summon whatever dwelt beyond the threshold. Yet remaining here felt equally perilous. Summoning all my courage, I clutched the doorknob once more, my heart colliding against my ribs as the silhouette outside shifted, now more menacing, the air thick with foreboding intent. I looked back, a low gurgling sound blossoming like a dark flower, and there it stood, closer than ever, eyes seared into my soul. That I twisted the knob, praying for escape, but the door resisted. Panic refueled my desperation, and as I shifted my weight to throw my shoulder against it, a guttural growl rolled from outside, vibrating through the wood and deep into my chest. The space between us narrowed, filled with something grotesque that seeded memories of the tales I had unwittingly summoned. Suddenly, the lights flickered once, then again before plunging me into darkness. It was only for a moment, but in that shrouded instant I heard it, the sound of claws dragging against wood. The door swung inward, a revelation that led my heart to plummet into the pit of despair. Before I could react, a cold hand gripped my ankle, dragging me back toward a void of shadows. My scream splintered the night, echoing through the trees, but I knew then, whatever sinister force had been whispering my name was closer than I had dared imagine. As the taste of damp earth flooded my mouth, I reached for a flickering glimmer of hope before everything dissolved into nothingness. And that's when I heard it, my own voice whispering from the darkness, "You shouldn't have opened the door." The world churned around me. One moment I was fighting against the pull of the darkness, and the next I was inexplicably weightless, suspended in the gloaming. A fleeting moment caught between the urge to scream and the primal instinct to remain silent, lest the shadows draw nearer. With a frantic instinct, I clawed at the air, desperate to find purchase, only to have my fingers scrape against something wet and slick. The earth around me teemed with life and decay, invading my senses with its putrid scent. It was the smell of the graves. I recognized it from countless horror films. Each breath I drew deepened my confusion, merging the fresh scent of rain with the chilling essence of rot that clung to the darkness like a shroud. Suddenly, I landed hard on my back. The contact knocked the wind from my lungs, a gasp escaping my lips as I became aware of the echoes surrounding me. They were not my own. Unseen voices slithered around me, murmuring words that felt oddly familiar yet sinister, half-formed prayers or incantations tangled in a language I couldn't place. Wincing against the pain that radiated through my body, I turned my head, straining to see through the tangled foliage. Dim smudges of light flickered in the distance, the pattern resembling fireflies dancing against an obsidian sky. But they weren't fireflies, it was too cold for them. Panic surged through me, and I forced myself to sit up, shaking off the remnants of my disorientation. Shadows whipped around me like living entities, vengeful and restless. I could hear them whispering, drawing nearer to my quivering frame. As the whispers intensified, they morphed into one distinct voice, a litany of complaints, accusations, and desperate cries. "Don't leave us," it begged, a woman's voice trembling with despair. The icy fingers of fear constricted around my heart as I realized that the voices, like those in my dreams, seemed to reflect the anguish of souls trapped between worlds. I scrambled to my feet, the ground slick beneath me, and pressed my hands against the rough bark of a tree for balance. It absorbed my weight like a silent sentinel, and in that moment of contact, I felt an electric pulse radiate through the wood, pulling from the very essence of whatever demonic energy permeated this cursed place. The shadows flickered around me, swirling with desperation. Suddenly, the malevolent voice rose above the others, harsh and eager. "You have to help us. The door it leads to despair, but there is a way out. My heart raced as I sensed something drawing near. I turned my head quickly, hoping to glimpse the source. A fleeting shadow elongated and warped against the trees, but then vanished before I could focus. The whispers shifted to a sorrowful lament, their dissonance amplifying my anxiety as I felt the ground tremble beneath me. Suddenly, a colossal figure loomed among the trees, obscured by the murkiness, its outline barely formed but towering against the night. Fear gripped my throat, and I stumbled back, trying to retreat from its presence. "Help us!" The voices cried, their anguish echoing in my ears as I grasped desperately for clarity in the chaos. "Save us before it's too late." A deep, gravelly laugh resonated from the darkness, a chuckle that felt like jagged ice cutting through my chest. "Too late?" It taunted, and I recognized that tone. It belonged to the figure that had haunted my window before my reckless choice to open the door. "You think you can escape? You released me, child. Now you will bear witness to what lies beneath." With a sudden lurch, the ground beneath me surged, and the shadows roared. I staggered as the earth seemed to part and a swirling vortex opened up, revealing glimpses of what lay below. A pit of writhing shapes, faces twisted in silent screams, clawing at each other in an abyss of despair. As the vortex expanded, it devoured everything in its pull, and I was caught in its merciless grasp, held hostage between two worlds. Above, the remnant of my warmth and humanity. Below, the oblivion of souls crying for salvation. In that moment, all I could hear was the cacophony of echoes, a chorus of tormented souls drowning in despair. The towering figure morphed, becoming indistinguishable from the dark, a monstrous eclipsing force, looming only to laugh. "You chose wrong." The abyss beckoned with an insatiable hunger, and as I felt myself slipping closer, the last remnants of my strength melted away. "Save us" lingered in every whispered breath, mingling into a haunting chorus, an echo vying for recognition. Yet I faltered, succumbing to its will, believing there might be a way to escape. But just as the shadows closed in on me, a blinding flash illuminated the ravenous form before me, and I screamed, my voice swallowed by the laughter of the darkness as a new realization crashed over me. What I had thought was my escape from the entity was merely my invitation to join the damned. And on the cusp of oblivion, I heard a voice behind me, tender yet dripping with malice. "You should have stayed inside." The darkness pulsed with a life of its own, a suffocating presence that wrapped around me like a shroud. My breath came in sharp, panicked gasps as I strived to pull back from the edge of that yawning abyss, where screams morphed into grotesque echoes, each proclamation a lament of the forsaken. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, an insatiable hunger beckoning me closer to some eternal punishment. Summoning all my resolve, I focused on the dim flickers of light, which had taken on a more intense hue, illuminating the writhing shadows with an unnatural glow, hinting at a reality not meant for human eyes. They flickered like dying stars, desperately fighting against the dark tide that threatened to engulf them entirely. Clenching my fists, I staggered backward, feeling the oppressive energy of the entity thrum through the earth, a warning tinged with mockery. "Stay close, don't let it consume you," the woman's voice begged, the sound so clear it felt as if she were right beside me. But the overwhelming dread suffocated me, threatening to turn me into one of those lost souls clawing for freedom below. As I fought the pull of the shadows, a hideous shriek pierced the air, cutting through the clamor of tormented whispers, a terrible sound full of loss and despair. My heart raced, a primal instinct shouting at me to flee, yet in my confusion, I could only grip the tree tighter, as the tremor of the gathering darkness set roots deeper into the ground. Again, the laughter from the colossal figure rumbled, shaking the very foundation of my sanity. "Do you hear them?" it boomed. "The price of trespassing? The price of your ignorance?" As if igniting a fuse of dread, shadows surged, coiling around me with oily tendrils. My vision blurred, the borders of my reality muddled in the chaos of sound and sight. Suddenly, from within the storm of whispers, I discerned a name I had feared to utter my own. "Help me! You must help them!" A desperate chorus enveloped me, tightening around my throat, yet amidst the panic and the cries, my mind remained stubbornly tethered to a singular thought. What if I really could forge a way out? Gritting my teeth, I turned to face the tormenting figure, my voice trembling but steady. "You want me to witness their suffering?" I shouted, prying open my defiance. "But no more. I refuse to bow to this despair." The laughter ceased abruptly, and for a tremulous second, the swirling shadows drew back, recoiling as though stinging from the light of a half-formed truth. Seizing the moment, I buried my fear and propelled myself toward the flickering light's tiny beacons against the encroaching dark, a chance to wrest free from their grip. With each step, the ground quaked beneath me, the laughter replaced by a heavy silence that seemed to draw upon my very spirit. And then I saw them, the trapped souls, their mouths contorted in wordless screams. Wisps of grayish mist wove through their forms, as if the shadows themselves had taken root in their essence. But their eyes glimmered with a muted brilliance, pleading for recognition. "Forgive us," one of them cried, reaching out with a gnarled hand, fingers entwined with despair. "You must find the heart of your fears. The door opens for those who dare among the damned." Suddenly, the earth trembled violently, and the towering shadow launched forward, warping the air with its presence. In that heartbeat of distraction, everything around me warped and twisted, pulling my surroundings into a vortex of madness. I flailed, losing my connection with the desperate plea of the souls as the landscape of dread shifted, swirling into an image inexplicably familiar, a view of my own home. My heart sank, dread enveloping me in a tighter grasp as a voice spoke from within the shadows, cold and intoxicating. "What you seek lies not in others' despair, but in the reflections of your own choosing." I staggered, dizzy from the weight of revelation. The veil between my world and this accursed realm thinned, unraveling a tapestry of my past. But why did this place feel so intimately woven into my own existence? The lights flickered warningly, the tortured souls reframing their forms as shadows stretched toward me, reaching out in a desperate grasp. "Back! Turn back!" But it was too late. The laughter erupted again, drowning out their pleas. I was once more surrounded by darkness. Just as despair threatened to engulf me totally, I saw a rusty key, dripping with an unholy substance, shimmering amidst the shadows. Hurling myself towards it, I felt the suffocating grip of darkness gnawing at my edges, pulling me closer to the void. "No!" "The door!" they cried, their grief echoing in my mind as the shadows conspired to ensnare every part of me. With a single desperate lunge, I seized the key. Electrical currents surged through my fingertips, the ground ruptured beneath, casting the shadows aside, revealing a pathway of flickering light. Heart hammering, I sprinted toward that feeble illumination, the laughter rising behind me, a tumultuous storm of rage and hunger. But the shadows weren't done. As I reached the threshold, a hand shot from the darkness, grasping my ankle with icy fingers. "Foolish child! You cannot escape the legacy of your own darkness," it hissed, and with every ounce of strength I stumbled forward, the boundary between worlds tearing at my spirit. And just as I seemed to cross into the light, the world erupted into a deluge of whispers. "Return!" they cried in unison, shadows clawing back for their claim as I saw the face of despair looming just inches from mine. Then, everything blazed white, the key burning brighter than the sun, and as I felt the world collapse around me, my last sight was the malevolent figure's grin, wide and expectant. "You will see," it crooned, and then darkness reclaimed all. Awakening felt like emerging from a deep, suffocating slumber, only to find the weight of dread sitting heavily on my chest. I blinked against the harsh brightness, moments of confusion darting through my mind. Where was I? The memories of that other world, tainted and dark, clawed to the surface like vibrant specters, forcing themselves into my consciousness. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs as I took in my surroundings. I lay upon a damp, moss-covered floor, surrounded by thick trees forming a twisted archway overhead, their branches thick with shadowy, whispering tendrils. Hollow silence enveloped me, yet I felt the air vibrate with the echoes of those lost souls, a distant lamentation laced with a chilling urgency. I struggled to sit up, realizing I was still clutching the rusty key, its surface slick with an eerie sheen, pulsating against my palm. Did I escape? I murmured to myself, looking around like a stunned fool. But the scent in the air, a bitter, decaying aroma, insisted otherwise. It hung heavy and pregnant with the weight of tragedy. I was still ensnared within the dark woods, but what had the key unlocked? Tentatively I stood, feeling the moist earth squish beneath my feet as I leaned against a gnarled trunk. The trees seemed to lean closer, their creaking limbs almost alive, eager to catch whispers from the shivering shadows that swirled around me. "Stay, stay, you are one of us now," they seemed to chant, A chorus low enough to send shivers crawling up my spine that I swallowed hard and began to move, threading through the grotesque foliage that felt sentient, watching my every step, deliberating on whether to hinder or to guide me. Panic twisted my gut. If I had escaped the grasp of that terrible shadow, why did it still feel like I was being hunted? Thick mist cloaked the ground as I pressed forward, swallowing me in a cocoon of eerie stillness. I suddenly noticed faint flickers of movement, darting from the corners of my vision, ugly contorted shapes that disappeared when I turned to face them, as if they were taunting me, awaiting my next misstep. Paranoia dripped into my mind like oil, saturating it with dread. Then I saw a figure darting between the trees ahead, more shadow than substance. It rose and fell, laughing, so malevolent, its laughter an echo of the chaos that had hunted me in the other realm. Faster, faster! It beckoned, teasing me to chase, leading me further into desolation. I shivered, recognizing the dance. It was my fear compelled to chase itself. Please, stop! I yelled, desperate for the torment to cease. And as I reached the spot where the shadow had stood, an echo buzzed against the trunks, unsettling tree spirits vibrating beneath my skin. Suddenly a chorus erupted around me. Dozens of unseen voices cried, "You cannot escape the whispers, your choices echo." Before I could process the warning, a piercing wail sliced through the air. I turned to observe a sight that delivered a wrenching horror. Among the trees I found the wretched forms of those tortured souls, their translucent bodies rising from the ground, begging for salvation against an unforgiving tide. Their eyes now glowing held a mixture of anguish and longing, striving to pull me back like roots, to entangle me in their torment, forever caught in the web of despair. "Help us!" One languished, its form half-formed and shifting as it reached toward me, sorrow embedded in its features. "You must confront the stillness, the root of your fears. Only then we might together escape this cursed fate." Sweat coated my brow as I stumbled backward, my chest tightening with a sense of hopelessness. What if I couldn't face the truth, the darker pieces of myself that clung to the shadows? The laughter seemed to swell in a cacophony of mocking delight, and I could hear the scream of my own fears wrapping around me tighter. A vivid memory enveloped Mephises of loved ones wrenched away, lost in spirals of darkness, their cries merging with the wails of those surrounding me. Instinct yelled for me to run, to flee from the tortured cries, but guilt anchored me to the spot. "You the key of your past, find it." Another voice screeched above the cacophony, clawing at the remnants of my resolve. The trees around me twisted, branches reaching out like skeletal hands, inviting me to remember, to confront the pain that had tethered me within their grip. My past, barely recognizable and steeped in shadows, rose before me with blinding clarity. Moments of regret, isolation, choices that had devastated those I had loved. Each realization felt like poison, as I faltered and succumbed to the weight of grief. Suddenly behind me, a dark form began to manifest, a silhouette exuding overwhelming familiarity, a twisted reflection of myself carved from fear and regret. Its eyes glinted with malevolence, mirroring the red-hot anger of my own past decisions. It held the key, and in its other hand, the faces of those I had failed flickered in and out of existence. "Come now, shall we finally end the game?" A surge of terror gripped me, and as I felt the chilling laughter rising again, the dark figure extended its hand, beckoning me closer into its heart of shadows. I froze, uncertainty entwining with dread as the woods began to pulse, each tree circling in rhythm with my frantic heartbeat. The question coiled inside me. Would I dare confront the darkness within and unlock the truth, or would I forever be devoured by the despair that clung so tightly like death itself? Just as I braced for an answer, the wind howled, casting what felt like a sinister omen into the air, and the world turned in that moment. The branch snapped above, crashing to the ground as silhouettes of souls surged around me, urging me in, or were they dragging me down? I gazed into the figure's eyes, knowing the moment of truth loomed close, and as my heart thundered with unyielding terror, I prepared to either seize my salvation or plunge into the endless abyss once more. And then, as the shadows rippled and the ground split, I heard the final whisper echoing from my past, a single word that held the weight of my entire existence: choose. I blinked against the dense darkness enveloping me as the word reverberated through my core, resonating with a foreboding sense of finality. The choice hung in the air, heavy with despair, tainted with the stench of regret. The shadows danced around me, alive with anticipation, pulling me toward the precipice of my fate. The dark figure, my twisted echo, grinned, its teeth a jagged contrast against the obsidian void of its being. "You have been chosen," it taunted, voice a slippery whisper weaving through my thoughts. "Choice is the essence of despair, your despair." As I stood there, paralyzed by fear, the moist earth beneath my feet began to quake, the ground cracking open to reveal yawning chasms that beckoned with a chilling promise of oblivion. The wails of the souls resonated against the chaos, urging me to decide, even as I felt their sorrow seep into my flesh. "Help save us," they begged, their voices merging into a haunting symphony. I clutched the rusty key tightly, feeling its pulsations resonate with the turmoil roiling inside my heart. Here in this dark forest where shadows and sorrow entwined, I realized every choice I had made had led me here. Shades of every regret summoning me like a tragic melody, unceasing and binding. "Choose and let pain ebb or grow," mocked the figure, its form shifting and warping with malicious delight. "You know the price of indecision." The laughter morphed into a cacophony, the trees creaking ominously, and the spectral voices crescendoed in a paradigm of despair. Drawing me closer to the shifting darkness, I opened my mouth, attempting to utter a wardeny word, but found myself engulfed in silence, the weight of endless trauma choking my voice. What if I surrendered to this reflection of my nightmares? What if the darkness I feared was the very thing I needed to confront? "Choose." The insistent call rang out, and in that terrifying moment of indecision, the woods thrummed with volatile energy, cloaking me in a blanket of dread. Then, from the edges of the forest, I saw it. Shadows, smaller, jagged shapes creeping through the mist, each pulsating with a desperate urgency. Their eyes burned like hot coals, seeping hatred and longing as they rushed, writhing against the boundaries of nature, merging with the dark mass threatening to envelop me. They were neither lost souls nor the friends I once knew. They were something else, a new horror that twisted my heart into knots. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned to flee, but the world around me contorted, the path enveloped in a thick velvet fog that concealed my escape. My frantic breaths echoed, chased by the sound of shuffling figures closing in. I stumbled over roots twisted like fingers grasping at my ankles, desperately pulling me back to face my tormentor, back to the echoes of my ghostly choices. But I wouldn't let it consume me. As my pulse quickened, I realized I was moving toward the heart of the forest, where the air twisted and thickened like an ancient curse, a vibrant void resonating with the energy of lost memories. From the shadows streamed forth not just the anguished souls of the past but new horrors, cryptids of my own design, beasts molded from nightmares that haunted my guilt, their forms shifting like liquid shadow. "Faster, faster," the dark figure sang, joining the haunting chorus emerging from the depths, urging me toward where the very essence of choice lay waiting. I fought the instinct to succumb to their horrid song. My heart was a battleground, torn between surrender and flight. But I pressed on, the key tugging at the fibers of my being, promising to unlock the truth that would either save me or lock me beyond return. Through the grove I raced, foliage slashing at my skin, as specters darted around me, their grasp stinging with the freshness of betrayal. The winds howled, each gust carrying taunts and cries from the past, amplifying the weight of the decision I still evaded. The dark laughter swelled, harmonizing with the cries of horror. It was all growing unbearably loud, a punishment amplifying my already split consciousness. Just as I broke through the final barrier of trees, the ground trembled violently beneath my feet, cracking apart to unveil a gaping maw of darkness. An inky abyss writhed, threatening to swallow me whole. Cries for help resonated, merging with the cacophony of laughter, every voice now unrecognizable, distorted into a single cry for judgment. My heart raced as the dark figure loomed near, arms outstretched, beckoning for my choice, my surrender. As I prepared to confront that part of myself I had hidden away, the earth trembled violently, splitting open further, and through the fissures emerged horrific revelations. Cryptids morphed from the veins of my anxiety and despair, and they were not alone. In the chaos I felt a touch, icy and clammy, wrapping around my wrist, pulling me closer to the edge. I screamed, no longer sure whether I was falling into madness or seeking truth. And as the world around me blurred into a whirlwind of nightmares and grief, I saw the face of one soul, an echo from my past, manifesting within the darkness, a face I had long thought lost and guilt-laden with memories that I cannot choose alone. "Bring me your light," it whispered, fingers stretching as if to bridge the chasm between redemption and doom. And in that chaotic moment, with shadows entwining around me and a cosmic choice demanding my answer, I was forced to confront what I had long since buried. The atmosphere twisted around me as I teetered at the edge of the chasm, my heart a frantic drum beneath my skin. In the oppressive silence that followed the soul's plea, all I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears and the distant murmur of forgotten memories, each whisper urging me to make a choice, a desperate hunger to remind me of the cost of my indecision. The face looking back at me from the darkness was once filled with warmth and laughter, now marred by despair. It belonged to Claire, my childhood friend, a name sealed with my every regret. You must choose, you must choose," she implored, voice strained yet mingling with a sorrowful familiarity. The icy grip around my wrist was no longer a suffocating tether. It was a lifeline, reminder of the connection I had severed so selfishly long ago. Behind me, the shadows swirled, shifting forms slithering closer, each twisted face reflecting my failures. They snarled, their eyes glinting malevolently like shards of shattered glass. Each movement revealed glimpses of my past and the secrets clinging to the edges of my conscience. A rift in time opened behind me, a window showing what could have been a world where Claire and I remained inseparable, where we laughed and shared our dreams instead of drifting apart into the depths of grief. Yet, through the window of fragile hope, I could see them, the lurking horrors twisting from the edges of my memory, dark and primal, consuming every thought of joy and innocence. "Help me." Claire's voice trembled like a leaf caught in a storm as she sought to pull her spectral form from the grip of despair. "You promised you would never leave me." I clawed at the air, torn between the girl of my past and the suffocating abyss clawing at my sanity. "What do I need to do?" I pleaded, desperation tinging my voice. The warmth of Claire's presence flickered like a candle in the wind, swallowed almost entirely by shadows. With a heartbeat of trepidation, I turned to the dark figure, its grin warped into a grotesque smile. "Complete the cycle. Bring forth the light you carry, and in your choice, embrace what must be endured," it hissed. The echoes of its voice melded with that of the mockery and anguish surrounding me. "Will you save her, or shall she remain among the others, lost in your mistakes?" At its words, tendrils of dread spiraled through me. The shadows writhed, whispering dark truths I had buried deep, splintering my resolve. The keen sensation of guilt punctured my heart. I had abandoned my friend, my promises rippling into the void. The weight of responsibility I had tried to escape crushing me anew. "Choose wisely." The figure leered, leaning closer, its hunger palpable. "What are you willing to sacrifice to save a soul? What light resides within you that can extinguish this darkness?" The trees bore witness, their gnarled branches clawing at the encroaching shadows, urging me to make a choice that haunted me from every direction. As the abyss yawned wider, I felt the tremors in the ground intensifying, the very earth betraying my thoughts. Claire's phantom reached out, desperation etched upon her ethereal features, drawing nearer to the edge of the gaping maw. I struggled for control, choking on my terror as I considered every choice that had brought me here. I recalled how I pushed her away, how I had accepted a new life without considering the echoes of the past. Chains of guilt fettered my heart. I was tormented by the absurdity of the decision laid before me. The shadows shrieked with anticipation, a chorus of chaos rising as my spirit wavered, pleading for clarity amidst the torment. Suddenly, as if summoned by my doubt, I heard a different voice, a hollow cry that gnawed at my sanity. "He doesn't deserve your light, Claire." It slithered through the air, slathered in malice, resonating deep within me as the dark figure chortled with mirth. "To save one must lead to the sacrifice of the other. Choose." With each frantic heartbeat, the ground beneath me began to shake violently, the fissures widening, and from the depths shadows poured upward, grotesque beasts of every insecurity I had ever faced. They entwined around my legs, clawing at my resolve. Panic surged through me, fighting against the overwhelming urge to save Claire even if it meant stepping into the depths with her. "Bring me your light," her voice echoed, softer now, but the darkness snarled, morphing into a cacophony of horrors. The memories of betrayal warped into torturous nightmares, dark truths I had cloaked in silence now unraveling before my eyes. And just when I thought I could muster the courage to leap into the chasm, to embrace whatever twisted fate awaited me, an echo of laughter rumbled through the air, impossibly rich and layered, thick with vindictive glee. I turned around to find the dark figure had transformed, morphing into a twisted version of Claire herself, mocking the very essence of who she was. "Do you still want to save her?" it taunted, teeth gleaming in the starlight that bled through the canopy. You shouldn't have come here now, the choice is not just yours to make. Just then, realizing the true depth of betrayal, I felt a hand close over my mouth and another squeeze my shoulder. As I spun around, eyes wide with horror, I came face to face with a figure I had not expected. Standing resolutely in the shadows of my fear, a grim specter, who bore the scars of choices left unmade. It's your fault, the figure hissed, echoing the very sentiments that twisted my heart with guilt. And the plunge into darkness grew inevitable. The grip around my shoulder tightened, an iron vice of unshakable dread. I knew this specter, his face was familiar, lined with anguish and regret, mirroring the one I saw in the mirror every day since Claire's departure. Do you think you can rectify your mistakes? He sneered, revealing teeth that were occasionally stained with the remnants of lost hopes. You failed her once, now you're poised to fail again, stay back. I shouted, voice breaking as my breath quickened. Panic surged through me as I stumbled back, but the abyss and shadows taunted, beckoning me to fall. The ground trembled violently beneath my feet, shards of rock breaking away and tumbling into the dark maw. I felt the earth weeping, mourning every unmade decision, every crude lie concealed behind the mask of normalcy I wore. Why are you here? I gasped, desperate to understand the twisted reunion. Why now? His laughter vibrated in the air, a sound that curdled my insides. You think this is merely a choice between light and dark? It's about understanding the price of your silence, the weight of every unnecessary word you held back. His eyes sparkled with malevolence, holding within them the haunting memory of Claire's laughter, but it was stained with bitterness. From behind me, Claire's spectral form flickered, a candle in a storm smothered by despair. The dark figure that had imposed itself upon my nightmare ducked behind her like a thief in the night, and for a moment, I thought I saw the real Claire's sadness etched into the very fabric of her transparency. Save me, she pleaded, urgency crackling in her voice like static electricity, the despair in her eyes a mirror to my own terror. Behind her, the shadows writhed restlessly, as if they were alive and felt every ounce of my panic. The twisted figure whispered in half-formed words to hold on to her. You must descend into the depths. Suddenly, the specter by my side, the embodiment of everything I regretted, lunged forward, his hands reaching for Claire like a desperate wolf seeking understanding. Let her go, I shouted instinctively. The room felt charged with static as both figures collided, an explosion of light and darkness battling for dominance, sending ripples through the air. With every ounce of strength, I pushed past him, reaching for Claire, who drifted disturbingly close to the chasm's edge. The abyss beckoned, pulsating with shadows that reached for her like desperate arms. You must choose, I roared, now more uncertain than ever, melting into the chaos around us. The shadows twisted in anticipation, clinging to the edges of my thoughts, whispering promises of anger, despair, and rage over a lifetime. What will you sacrifice? They hissed. What will remain if you save her? My heart pounded into my ears, drowning out all rational thought. As I glanced back at my former friend, my heart aching with love and guilt, shrieked. A question arose that I couldn't ignore any longer. What if I was not meant to choose at all? The absurdity of this revelation grasped me. What if there's another way? I shouted at the dark figure, the specter beside me, my voice swallowed by the night. The air thickened as time stood still, wrapping around us like a suffocating blanket, pressing against my chest as I realized what it meant to take control simultaneously. I turned toward both Claire and the dark entity as if they were two sides of the same coin, each pulling me in opposite directions while threatening to fracture my soul. You're both part of me. Your pain is my pain, and I can't save one without understanding the other. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and the dark figure sneered in response. You think you hold the power? You're merely a pawn in this game. Survival is for the willing, not the weak. Stop your whimpering and choose. With the weight of both Claire's gaze and the specter's dark memories upon me, I felt electricity crackle in the air. The fabric of reality warped around my heart, forming a flickering web of light and darkness that surged with the shared history I had tried to escape. Each choice reverberated back through time, and I realized maybe I didn't need to eradicate either of them. I could accompany them both, face the cost of those choices head dash on. In that instant of clarity, tendrils of shadows lunged forward, and with ferocity I didn't know I possessed, I cried out, then I will break the cycle. Time shattered around me as the darkness convulsed, howling with rage. But before I could comprehend the impact of my declaration, the earth beneath me trembled violently. Suddenly, Claire let out a gasp that echoed with anguish, and the chasm opened wider than I ever thought possible, pulling at my sanity. "No!" I screamed, reaching out, but the shadows surged forward, and then a laugh, high and mocking, filled the air as the darkness coiled around me, spiraling into a void of despair. "Then perhaps we'll see how deep your love truly runs," the specter hissed, and in an instant, the very ground collapsed beneath my feet, severing my connection to Claire, plunging me into the depths where no light could follow. And as the shadows consumed me, drenched with both fear and a flicker of hope, something waited at the bottom, its presence infinitely more malevolent than anything I could have imagined. I hadn't thought the fall would ever end. The plunge into darkness was unrelenting. An eternity suspended in a void where time lost its meaning. Silence enveloped me, but in its depths, something churned. Anticipation thrummed in the air, thick with malevolent promise. I was weightless, unanchored from reality, yet a dull, gnawing fear gripped my heart, whispering that I was not alone. A sudden jolt snapped me from my reverie, and I landed hard on a cold, damp surface, the jarring impact sending shivers through my spine. Instinctively, I wrenched myself upright, blinking in the bleak environment before me. Shadows danced, painting grotesque shapes upon the damp walls of what appeared to be a cave, decrepit and ancient. The air stank of decay mingled with a coppery tang that made my stomach churn. "Welcome." A voice slithered through the air like a serpent, resonating within the hollow chambers of my mind. It was a low and distorted tone that seemed to echo off the jagged walls. My heart raced. "You have chosen wisely, I see." "What have I done?" I croaked, the cavernous space amplifying my every sound. In the dim light, I could discern twisted shapes writhing at the edges of my vision. Were they my fears come to life, or was it something worse? Was I now part of some insidious game, a pawn trapped within the depths of this nightmare? "You did not choose," the voice replied, dripping with disdain. "You merely wandered deeper into the abyss. Here the price is different. There are no choices, only consequences." With a shuddering breath, I took in my surroundings. In every corner, strange runes glimmered faintly before fading away like phantoms. They pulsed rhythmically, as if responding to my heartbeat. And then I saw them, the figures, mere glimmers of human forms, writhing just beyond the flicker of the runes. Their faces contorted with agony, mouths open in silent screams. "Who are you?" I asked, steeling myself against the encroaching despair. "The lost," the voice hissed, "the souls of those who did not understand the depths of their choices. You came seeking redemption, but you will only find torment." My pulse quickened as dread seeped into my bones. Memories surged forth. Claire's face, the laughter now barely a whisper, her essence slowly sinking into the darkness. The shadows danced approvingly, hungry for my guilt. Each thought ignited a spark of anguish I desperately tried to suppress. "Claire! I need to find her!" I shouted, the deep cavern amplifying my frantic cries, a cacophony of desperation reverberating through the void. "You're too late. Such things are impossible. You will not find her here. This is a place of reckoning." The shadows clung to my limbs, thick as molasses, each inch forward a Herculean task against their oppressive weight. Movement caught my eye, and a flicker of hope ignited when I spotted a flickering light in the distance. It pulsed erratically, calling out like a moth to the flame. Without thinking, I charged toward it, fear blurring my vision. The shadows screamed in protest, their voices rising in a discordant wail that clawed at the edges of my sanity. As I hurried, I stumbled upon crumpled remnants of who I once knew, a decayed photograph, Claire smiling, untouched by the darkness that surrounded. My heart clenched painfully as I dropped to my knees, tears burning trails down my cheeks in the oppressive air. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the darkness, to Claire, to myself. "I'm sorry for everything." The shadows writhed in reaction, recoiling from my sorrow. They swirled in a frenzy, teasing me with fleeting glimpses of light as I grasped the frail photograph, attempting to remember her laughter, the way she loved unconditionally. A low rumble echoed through the cave, resonating with the heaviness in my chest, echoing the weight of regret and grief that had become my prison. "You think your apologies and memories will save you?" The voice taunted again, now booming from all directions. "This is only the beginning of your reckoning." Suddenly, the pulsing light fluctuated wildly, flickering as if communicating directly with my fraying nerves. The shadows twisted into grotesque faces, newly formed from my darkest fears. They loomed closer, hands outstretched towards me, whispering promises of despair, urging me to give in, to turn from hope, abandon my search, embrace my fate. But then, just as I felt the weight of surrender, a new voice erupted from the depths of the light, a voice so familiar it shredded through the darkness, a lament laced with hope. "Help me! I'm here!" Claire's cry pierced the air, echoing with urgency, forcing me to react. The shadows shrieked in protest, but I surged towards that beacon, feeling my heart race and my mind fracture. The cavern began to tremble violently, the earth beneath me quaking as I grasped the wall. "Claire!" I shouted, willing the light to reveal its source. But at that moment the shadows coiled around me tighter than ever, dragging me back, forcing me to confront my deepest fears. "Remember, the deeper you search, the more horrifying the truth." The voice echoed, a haunting reminder of the price I was about to pay. Then, the cavern trembled explosively, a deafening roar echoing through the shadows as a new presence emerged, something ancient and insatiable, a vile hunger that smelled of death, lurking just beyond the threshold of light. And as I struggled against the overwhelming pull of despair, something in the dark shattered, sending echoes of my cries spiraling into the black abyss, drowning out Claire's voice as it faded, leaving me to face the true horror awaiting in the depths of the shadows. The trembling earth beneath me groaned as icy darkness swallowed any remnants of warmth. In that moment of utter despair, I felt the walls of the cavern closing in, echoing the screams of the tormented souls bound within, cries I had once dismissed as myth but now understood as my own. The shadows flickered closer, their malevolent shapes taking form as they whispered promises of eternal suffering, a fate I had to confront. "Claire!" I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of dread. I charged toward the pulsing light, desperately grasping at the tendrils of hope that clung to my heart. With each step the ground felt like quicksand, dragging me back while the shadows hurled taunts, mocking my every attempt, forcing me to face what I had buried so deep. "Your shame binds you to this place," the voice echoed, resounding in the cavern like a grotesque symphony, vibrating with malevolence. "It is not just Claire you seek to save." In that moment reality twisted, revealing fragments of my past, the mistakes that had spiraled like a tempest, far too vast for my fragile mind to comprehend. I gasped at the memories. Each mistake flickered condemned in the ghostly light, mirroring my unwillingness to face them, standing firmly between me and Claire. Then, like a vicious storm upon my heart, I heard her voice again, tremors of longing laced through its clarity. "Remember us, the promises you cannot abandon, hope." The shadows writhed as if the echoes of my deepest secrets swelled to life. A cacophony erupted around me, each howl reverberating with fear, my fear. Yet Claire's voice remained steadfast, guiding me. "Push through. Reclaim your choices." But the shadows had formed claws, sinking deep into my psyche, pulling me back into the horrors I tried to escape. Every ghastly tableau splintered before my fearful visions of Claire fading into nothingness, our laughter swallowed by darkness. Racked with guilt, I fell to my knees amid the shadows, struggling against the obsidian tides that threatened to obliterate my very essence. And then it hit me, an overwhelming wave of clarity. In this cave of despair, it wasn't merely Claire I had to confront. I needed to reconcile my darkest self, the specter who had haunted me all along, my own reflection twisted in anguish. I had to embrace every failure and every neglectful moment, wield their pain into a beacon of truth that could carry us both from this forsaken place. "Light and darkness are one, they are the choices we make," I cried, rising to my feet, clutching the photograph of Claire tightly. "Your essence is my essence," I shouted, summoning all the love and regret I had for her into a focused point of intention. "Together we escape this, together we survive." Suddenly the cavern trembled, shadows recoiling as an undeniable energy surged between Claire and me. I drew a deep breath, feeling an electric charge fill me, a tether laced with love and sorrow. "You belong to the light," I bellowed, confronting the monstrous form of my tormentor that had merged with Claire's essence. I would not allow it. I squeezed the photograph, letting the memories flood over meth warmth of friendship, the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had forged together as the weight of shadows turned to a whisper. The light pulsed again, driving darkness back momentarily. I saw Claire's ethereal form shift, battling against the differentiation that sought to entangle her. "Claire," I breathed, heart pounding in fierce rhythm. "We are one together," the shadows shrieked, a deafening howl of fury erupting as the ground beneath fissured, opening beneath my feet as if the abyss itself sought to swallow me whole. I felt the undeniable truth of all I loved encasing me, a fragile layer of light against the consuming darkness. As I locked my eyes on Claire's shimmering visage, I saw the fear dissipate, peering through the storm of malevolence that beset us. Embrace the darkness, but do not be consumed, I cried, feeling the cavern walls shake. There lies your light. Draw from the depth of your heart, Claire. An unearthly roar filled the cavern as the darkness shrank back, momentarily disoriented, revealing an opening in escape. My heart raced with the realization of what lay before me. If I chose to stand in the light and face the shadows with love and conviction, I could transcend. Now, Claire! I shouted, resolute. Reach for me. And in that moment, a radiant energy exploded, pulsing forth from my heart and enveloping the cavern like a violent storm, colliding with shadows that screamed in their demise. We were entwined, Claire and I, her essence binding with my newfound strength, together weaving a singular fabric of hope in defiance of despair. But as light consumed the dark, laughter erupted out of the shadows, a bone-chilling revelation that unfurled the very fabric of reality around us. You think you've escaped? It sneered through the chaos, the voice of the darkness hinting at triumph. You can never truly escape what you have summoned. And with that, like a flickering lantern, the light began to dim, shadows returning with an insatiable vengeance. Instinct screamed for me to flee, but I stood firm, clutching Claire's essence, and together we faced the sinister force. Only together can we confront the darkness. I yelled defiantly, pouring every ounce of love into the collision of light and shadow. It roared furiously, a howling tempest of ancient rage, mixing together torment and relief, echoing the chorus of souls bound within the memories I'd long abandoned. And as shadows merged with light, an eerie harmony rose in the air, dissonant and soul-piercing, a melody of dread and hope entwined. The final vestiges of despair clawed for purchase, but within that suffocating moment of despair, a chilling revelation gripped me. The purest darkness knows its origin. For as the shadows writhed and released their grasp in fear, I understood without light, the shadows were nothing, yet their echoes remain. The cavern imploded, ripping the fabric of the world apart with one last, echoing scream, leaving only silence in its wake. I fell weightless, floating as the echoes intertwined me, choices, Claire's soul, and the specters of our past, the weight of our combined fears forging something new. I awoke, gasping, consciousness surging back as I lay on the sodden earth, eyes wide as twilight kissed the horizon. Glancing around, I saw the forests embracing the dusk, shadows lingering at the edges, but the haunting melody now replaced with the chirps of crickets and the rustle of leaves. Life thrummed around me, but deep in my heart, I felt the growing weight of destinies yet to unfold. I shouldn't have opened that door, I whispered to the wind. But fate carries whispers too. And that's when I heard her voice, tender and clear, floating with the breeze. We're still here, together, and the smile that enveloped me was as chilling as it was enlightening. For the shadows remain waiting, lingering, telling whispers of a darkness still haunting the edges of the woods, those of us touched by it forever woven into their depth. I didn't escape. I merely embraced the truth. In that moment, as the final remnants of shadow retreated, I understood. The horror had merely begun to whisper.